Hey folks, this week I chat with James Cole about Firefly 3. It is a personal finance solution that lets you track your money, see where things are going and coming from. Lots more, you don't want to miss it, so stay tuned. This is Floss Weekly, episode 851, recorded Tuesday, October the 14th. Buckets of money. It's time for Floss Weekly. That's the show about free, libre, and open source software. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and today we're going to talk about money and finances and keeping track of those pretty much on a personal level, maybe a little bit on the business level, but doing this with open source software. And the 900-pound gorilla in the room is, of course, GNU Cash, which I use for a lot of different things. But there are other players in this space, and one of the other ones that's really interesting, in fact, the more I learn about it, the more I'm interested, is Firefly, specifically Firefly 3. And we came across this, and we got in contact with the creator, James Cole, and we said, hey, we should have you on the show. And James very graciously said, yeah, let's do it. So we've got James with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we heard I thought at first it was a small plane buzzing him. Turns out it was a scooter going by, but it made me curious. Where are you in the world, sir?
So I am in Arnhem in the Netherlands, which is south of Amsterdam, basically, which is usually the only city that people know in the Netherlands. So that's where we are. And yeah, it's 6:15, 6:30 here.
That's not too bad.
Early in the morning, right?
Right. Yeah, the one that really gets me is when I have calls with people that are in East Asia, like in China. We have some contacts there in Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And you know, it's either they're going to bed and we're up first thing in the morning, or we're going to bed and they're up first thing in the morning. And, you know, there's this little narrow window. So Europe is not too bad.
I spent some time in San Diego, and I had the exact same thing, where if I would call home, it would be either very late or very early. So there was very little time to even think about anything.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So Firefly 3. First off, what is it? Why would somebody use Firefly 3? What problem does it solve?
Well, it mainly solves my problem, which is where it started with Firefly 1, which was, basically managing your money. And the problem that I had at the time was, debt, not that much comparatively, but still. And I needed a tool to just see my transactions, maybe chart it a little bit. And at the time, in the whole personal finance space, you had, like you mentioned, GNU Cash. You had the more professional money, Microsoft Money kind of stuff. And that was basically it. And everybody else was using Google Drive to keep a list of their expenses. So I kind of started with, okay, I want to have some accounts, I want to have some transactions and maybe a budget, and let's see where it goes from there. And that's basically how it started, with me trying to solve my own money problems in a tool. I was a developer at the time. So what you do when you're a developer is you start building tools, and yeah, basically that's where it started. Yeah. So
I sort of had the idea. I'm very intrigued by this, and I had the idea I would go ahead and install it while we were talking. So if someone wants to try it out, let's say, so I've got the GitHub pulled up, and I see that you have a demo site. But let's say somebody actually wants to try this out, to use it with live data, and they say, I don't want to put it on anybody else's machine. What's the easiest way to do the install? How would you recommend somebody start?
I think Docker, basically. So I started building a web tool. I was doing web development, so then everything is a web tool. And after a while, but in the beginning it was very difficult. You had to install Apache, install Linux somewhere, stuff like that, self-hosted, blah, blah. At some point, Docker came up, and Docker started to become really user-friendly. And now we have one Docker Compose file and some settings, and basically the default settings are good enough, and then it runs.
All right. So I will start working on grabbing it from Docker while we talk.
Let's hope it actually works. Yeah, that would be good.
We're doing it live. What's with the name? I have two questions about the name. Where did Firefly come from? And why are we talking about Firefly 3? This sort of implies there was a 1 and a 2.
There were a 1 and a 2. So I had this fad at the time where all my projects were named after, I think, British planes from World War II. You need a theme. So You have servernames.com, stuff like that. But I had, okay, this is my theme. So it's an F from finance. And the original Firefly 1 never actually left my own laptop. It's just a piece of software. And at some point, I was working at a company programming in Groovy, which is a Java dialect. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to build Mark II in Groovy. Well, that lasted like a week. And at that point, I was like, okay, I want to start over. I want to do double bookkeeping. I want to do more with the database. And I saw myself making mistakes that I want to skip over in the next version. And of course, they say never do a rewrite, but I did a rewrite and I started Firefly 3, basically. And well, much to my surprise as well, that's the one that became popular. So there's probably never going to be a Firefly 4 or 5 or whatever. But yeah, that's basically where it came from.
Interesting. And what language is Firefly 3 written in, if we're not doing Groovy anymore?
It's it's in PHP. I think I started way back when in PHP 5 or maybe 4 even. And at the time, through the times, you upgrade, you go with new versions and new features and new frameworks. So now we're very cool at PHP 8.4, which is now the latest version.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's a you said it's a double entry bookkeeping system. So like for those that don't understand, what exactly does that mean, and why would somebody want it?
Nowadays it's tricky. The original idea was in finance that if you have two separate books where you record expenses, well, as an expense, but separately you record them as income. So you keep a double book where every expense that you make or income that you have is recorded twice. Once, for example, if you spend money in a store, you would write it down once as an expense on your end, but you would also record it in a book for the store as an income on the store side. So you could compare the books and make sure that money isn't stolen or defrauded or whatever. And that's been a financial system for years and years and years. And nowadays in the digital age, it's less of an issue maybe. It could still be an issue, but in a single database, technically speaking, it's less of an issue. But it does help forcing the integrity of your database. If a transaction is recorded twice, even if it's in the same database, you can be fairly sure that if you, for example, sum up all of the transactions that you have, you end up at zero. You know, if an expense, it's always counted by income. And it's a great way to think about how you move money. The fact that you can never really create money out of thin air. So even if you get money or a new account starts with an opening balance, the money has to come from somewhere. The money always has to come from somewhere. So there's always a withdrawal at some account that ends up in your account, for example. So there's always this money going back and forth. And that's technically speaking not really interesting when it comes to fraud, but interesting when it comes to how do you let money flow. Right.
Track. So you mentioned this idea of where it goes in the database, and I think like that's sort of a technical layer to it, but not really what double entry bookkeeping is about. In my mind, double entry bookkeeping is more about having a category for everything where it comes in and comes out, and then you can look at that category as its own account. And so, you could say, how much have I spent on eating out in the last year? And that's, at least in the way that I use it, that's what's the most interesting about the double entry system.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And that's also where my accounting knowledge stops. So when I designed this, the accounts are more or less for me, the stores or the shops where you spend money and not really the categories themselves. So after I realized that, I added categories and I added budgets and to get that level of detail. But yeah, that's also a very great advantage of doing double entry bookkeeping.
So have you had like an accountant or a CPA that has come along and helped you with this? And let me give you a little bit of background on this. So I've done business stuff. I've had conversations with CPAs, and I help a client that's a CPA with his computers, and so we talk about a lot of this stuff all the time. And one of the stories that he's told me is when he's talked to a group that makes accounting software. They've told him, we hire accountants and teach them to program rather than trying to hire programmers and teach them accounting. I thought that was so fascinating.
And that actually is a very good idea because I didn't and I don't. So you see in Firefly, and that's one of the critics about Firefly as well, that technically it's not really accounting, it's not really accountant proof. And whenever somebody who is an accountant uses Firefly 3, they are always, is this actually how you do it? This is terrible. You should really do this and this and this and this. But at the end of the day, I figured, well, if it helps me with my finances, then I'm okay with a little wiggle room in how stuff works. And I don't mind that it's, well, wrong or even broken, that somebody called it. As long as, I know where my money is going, I know what I'm spending it on, and yeah, this works for me and it's good enough. So there's also a level of financial literacy that if you are a good accountant or even a accountant, then Firefly might not be for you, but if you just want to keep track of your finances, if you want to know where stuff is going, then it should be good enough. Yeah.
So this is not intended to run a business off of.
No, and I had requests about it for a few times, but drawing invoices or really keeping track of the real double bookkeeping system, but that's tricky to do. Yeah, I think that's the system's too limited to do that.
Got it. Is there anything like creating invoices or any of that in there that somebody could use if they really wanted to?
No, there's an API, so you could always develop something against that API to get what you want. But for the real business stuff, you really have to look at Invoice Ninja, for example, or more of the professional apps, which is also easy for me. So there's less pressure to do all this stuff exactly right and have all the details ready, because when you want to run a business on software like this, software like Nucash or others, the level is also higher. So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And so what is and I talked about this, like the fact that I am very tempted to use Firefly 3 instead of Nucash. But what's some of the advantages why would somebody want to use Firefly 3? Like what's the killer features that you've added in there?
So what I hope are the killer features are budgeting. So you can keep track of the money you want to spend per month or per week or whatever period you like. You can add subscriptions and bills, stuff like that, so you know what expenses are coming up, which is something that I added at some point where, it's the end of the month, and I had this flow where I would manage my money through the month, so really from the first to the last day of the month. And then, at the 22nd or the 25th, a bill hits you, and you knew this, oh, wait, I was paying for this as well, but I already spent my money. So that's something to keep track of. That's something that I added. And there's a really cool way to save money. So like piggy banks, you want to save for something big, add it to your savings account, add it to a piggy bank. Mm-hmm. And this is something that you see in real banks as well, where they add this like virtual piggy banks. But that's in the system. Yes, sir.
Our digital bank calls it buckets. We have a high yield savings account and they call it a bucket. But yeah, absolutely the same idea.
Yeah, same concept where you just pour in money to save up for something automatically if you want to. But what for me are the killer features are there's a big rule engine, so you can categorize your transactions, you can add labels or categories or move money around, stuff like that. And I think that's a big one. There's a big rule engine that you can use to categorize transactions, to move money to other accounts or to add descriptions, stuff like that. And that's a really strong feature.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm trying to do the installation and I am getting an error. And so
crap.
That's all right. It's probably a problem on my computer because it's telling when I try to run the Docker Compose command, it's telling me unknown shorthand flag F in -F. It is something missing in Docker Compose, I am sure.
So you got the environment files. You copied those.
Yes. Copied it.
Shorthand. It's Windows or Linux?
Linux. Pop!OS.
Strange.
I am installing Docker Compose packages now to see if I'm missing something.
That could be it. Is it Docker/Compose or Docker space Compose that you're using?
I tried space.
Okay, yeah, that should work.
Yeah.
Should work.
It's probably just something that I don't have installed. So I will continue abusing apt to make it do the things that I want it to do. And then I also have to see if we've got people... Mashed potato. Windows? No, not for me, but that's all right.
I do know that people run Docker Compose and then run the software on Windows, so it should work.
Do you have like an idea of how many people run Firefly 3 and where they run it?
No, I got a pretty good idea from the pools from Docker Hub. But at some point it just starts, you got 1 million pools. So it doesn't really have a good indication of how much per day or per week or whatever. What for me is a very good indication that if I accidentally, and this never happens, leave a bug into a new release, people will start complaining after a few minutes. So that's a good sign that people are using the software and they are pretty quick about it. Mm-hmm. I had up until, I don't know, last year, maybe the year before, the software can ping for updates. Is there a new release? Blah 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 blah, and it did that to a server that I would control, so I could see in the logs how many people were doing that. And at the time, I had I think 200 people a day polling for new updates. And since they are doing that by default and it's opt-in every 2 weeks, you get a user base of a few thousand installations. So that's pretty good. But now it's an Azure bucket, and I'm not really keeping track of it. It's I didn't want to track people or keep log somewhere, so it's fine. And so I don't really know, but I know that it's a few thousand at least. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty good user base actually. Now, how many of those users have sort of converted themselves to assistant developers? Do you get patches in from them? Is this pretty much a one-man show? How does that part work?
It's pretty much a one-man show. It's not entirely fair because you do get a lot of patches and a lot of updates, but I see it's intermittent. So there is every now and then somebody contributes for a few weeks or a few months or a bug that they see or an issue that they want to get fixed, and then they kind of fade out and new people join again. But it's difficult to get a big community to actively help develop stuff. But also, fair enough, I can be pretty uptight about the changes that I want to see in the software and the quality that I want to see. So I'm not always open to new developers learning PHP. Don't do it on my brainchild. Find another project to play around in.
Yes. Yeah. I've had a conversation that goes like this in some of the other open source projects that I'm involved in, and there's a blog post that we've pointed people to from DHH back a couple of years ago that basically says open source is not a community and it's not a governance method. It is a license, and so that we are not required to run our project the way that other open source projects are run.
Yeah, that's also a very interesting one where you get a discussion with people about how, like you're running into all kinds of errors and problems and stuff right now with the installation. Well, it's always been a discussion, how easy do you want to make this for people to run and install and use? When, I don't necessarily get a lot of energy from building installation wizards, so I don't. At the same time, you want to acknowledge that people do want to use it and are willing to put up with a lot of stuff if you at least show them that you're willing to make it more user-friendly. So there's always a balance there. And I remember in the beginning that I was very strict about this stuff. It works for me, end of discussion. But that doesn't really work. That also doesn't really work in the open source space. If you want to have support or a community or just praise from people for what you're building, because you're also proud of what you're making, you got to give them some leeway in how the software works and runs and is installed.
Right.
And I'm saying this while you are running into Docker Compose errors, but still.
No, I got past that. And
very nice.
The next error is that something else is already running on port 80. I know how to fix that one. And now I just have to go back and see, is that Docker thing that I just started still running in the background and just not on the port, in which case I want to kill it first. No, I know enough to be dangerous about sysadminning and running Docker.
Nice, nice, nice.
But yeah, it's an interesting balance, right? Because you could go all in on that with it doesn't matter if it works for you. I'm the only one. Like I only care about this working for me. But then suddenly you don't have any users, and it's kind of nice to have some users and some other people that can write some code.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. For example, there's right now one person writing whole new, request classes and data validation stuff in a way that I would never have thought of it to do it like that. That's one. But also all of these feature requests and ideas and stuff to add and stuff to remove. That's also for me a whole new world. The features that other people came up with, I'm using actively today. Mm-hmm. So it's also a really great help to get your software to the next level.
Right.
So it would be unfair or even ugly to say, well, as long as it runs for me, I don't care. You got to do something back as well.
Yes, for sure. What license did Firefly 3 under?
It's now AGPL 3 or later.
Oh, it's interesting. We don't see a whole lot of projects that are AGPL. For obvious reasons, like if Google wanted to, Google and Amazon in that group, they just will not touch anything that's AGPL.
Yeah, that's an advantage and a disadvantage. For me, it's an advantage. When I started this, I was like, okay, let's make it open source, let's make it GPL, and let's see what happens. And I saw the commercialization of, for example, WordPress and other stuff, and I decided right out of the bat, that's not for me. It's I don't mind that people make money off software, that's not the discussion. Mm-hmm. But if you're in the personal finance space and you see people struggling with money and then you have to buy some Firefly installation to, it just didn't feel right. And I was like, okay, let's just make this as open source as we can. So the AGPL 3 is even more restrictive in that sense than the GPL. And if you want to run it somewhere, or if you want to edit it somewhere, then at least do me the courtesy of making everything that you're doing public as well. So this whole copyleft thing is something that quite appealed to me. And that's basically how I ended up with the AGPL license. But indeed, very few people will touch it in that sense. So commercialization is basically off.
It's off for everybody else. Do you have any plans of commercializing this yourself at some point?
No, not really.
Okay.
I get nice donations, which is cool. So I can spend some of my free time instead of working on Firefly. But other than that, no. I had the question a few times, but no, not really. No.
Okay.
I wanna so basically you see, and it was a trend a few years ago. Everything is a side gig and a hustle, and I was like, no, I'm actually quite happy with my free time, so I'm not going to do this. It's fine.
Yeah, I think it depends on like the nature of the project,
True.
and also like your situation, and so if one of two things happened, right? So like if you suddenly found yourself out of a job and you needed some income, then it would be more. I want to say tempting is not the right word because I don't consider it an evil thing to make money from open source. But
no.
Just because I can't think of a better word, it would be more tempting to try to commercialize it and come up with a way to make money out of this project.
That's absolutely true. So I do have the privilege of not needing to make money from this. So that's absolutely true.
Yeah. The other side of that is it may come a point to where this gets popular enough that there is a huge burden on you, either in support or in maintenance or in both.
Yeah.
And they're just, in some projects, there comes a point to where, the two options are either the people running the project burn out and it dies, or they find a way to make money from it.
Yeah.
I've seen that several times, been involved in that a few times myself too.
Oh, yeah. But that's something that you see, dual license stuff or other solutions to see if you can make an income of it, or you have to choose to stop or to do less or whatever. Yeah.
Yes. So we're talking about the banking side, like back to the Firefly itself. What about like plugging in and being able to download transactions from a bank? I know that's something that a lot of these do and that is fairly popular.
Yeah, that's something that's possible as well. So again, this started a few years ago with somebody said, yeah, I want to import data because I'm lazy like that. And at the time I was like, yeah, but if you want to have control of your finances, it also works when you have to type them all in manually, which works for me, as a concept to get a feel for where my money is going. So you can spend it easily. We all have the iPhones with the touchless payment, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, if you have to write down all of these transactions, then you feel where your money is going. So that's a nice theory, but it's also kind of unfair to, everybody's got to do it the way I do. And of course, it's also a challenge to build something. So I started with a importer for comma separated values, where you can enter any CSV file and it will try to parse it, categorize it, group it. You can tell the system for every column what kind of data is in a column, how it should be parsed, how it should be processed, and then it's a separate tool. That tool will import all of these transactions into Firefly, and then you have it. And you can do this every day or every week or whatever you want. And later, and this is very difficult in the open source space, I've been partnering with companies like Go Cardless and Salt Edge. They have these banking APIs, these unified banking APIs, where they solve the problem that if you want to import data from a bank directly, right now you got to talk to 1,000 different APIs with 1,000 different formats, process everything, and then put stuff into your own system. So there are quite a few companies in this space that give you one big unified API where you can download transactions from any bank. And a few of them are willing to allow open source software to connect for free. And that's basically what's possible as well. That's something that works as well.
Yeah, that's handy. So probably the easiest way then to make this work would be to look for a place to download a CSV from your bank?
Yeah, that's what's right now the most easy. There's also stuff like SimpleFin, which is a fairly unified format. And I still got to work on supporting QIF files and OFX files, stuff like that. So there's all these standard money formats from Microsoft Money and others.
Right.
And as long as I support them, then you can use those and import your data as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if I can do this from my bank or if I can only get PDFs. I don't know that I can get a CSV. This is the fun thing about trying to figure this out as we're on the call. I don't see a place to download CSVs, which is unfortunate because I would love to have some real data to be able to put in here. It may be here and I'm just not seeing it.
What you could try is see if there's it's in the documentation somewhere as well, if a company called Go Cardless supports your bank. I know they support very few US banks, so it's a bit of a gamble. Or maybe SimpleFin. Then it should be easy to connect both the data imported to Firefly and then get your transactions automatically. And of course, there's all kinds of scripts and tools to do this, daily or weekly or you want. So in my case, for example, it downloads new transactions twice a day, automatically parses them, groups them, at least most of them. And then you have a fairly up-to-date view in Firefly of your own finances.
Yeah, that's Go Cardless, like a credit card?
Yeah.
All right. I will see, while we're talking, I will see if I can find their list of banks because, yeah, I would like to get this set up, if nothing else. And so maybe we can dive into this a little bit, but like one of the things that in the screenshots that I've seen that look really, really interesting is the visualizations. The fact that you can just kind of look at a dashboard and see what's going on. That's a thing that Newcash really does not have a great... Newcash has a decent UX, and someone has worked hard on that, but it does not have any of that sort of flashy eye candy UI. And I feel like that's something that Firefly 3 you've intentionally done because it's useful. Yeah, absolutely. So this also started with, again, my own finances. So you want to see what am I making every month? What am I spending every month? It's usually the more important part. And what categories, I used to smoke, and then you see how expensive cigarettes can be. Not the only reason to quit, but a good one. Yeah, for sure.
And but also, eating out or going drinking with friends, the classic examples of where you can spend a lot of money without realizing it. And the visualizations that indeed that I built myself really helped me show where all that money was going. Mm-hmm. And especially in the beginning, you're like, oh no, this got to be a bug. No, this is correct crap. I got to do something about this. And for some reason, at least for me, seeing the two amounts in a chart really helps you see how much it actually is, instead of, it's two numbers. Yeah, numbers don't really make the difference for me. If I see a chart, that helps. So.
Okay, I found the place in my bank to get a CSV file. So nice. We'll now see if we can do an import.
If you, I don't particularly recommend it, but you can put your Firefly installation online as well, so you can reach it anywhere you want. It's fairly safe. There's also a public version of the data importer, so you could always use that one and connect back home. But it might be a big thing to do right now and live. But there's a lot of people who say, well, the data import is complicated, I don't want to do it. But I did put my installation online, so it's a very small subset of users. Mm-hmm. But you can use it, or at least see what it offers.
Yeah. I personally am not going to put my installation online. I'm going to stay as far away from that as possible.
Yeah, smart.
That's probably a good place to use a VPN to be able to get back into it, rather than putting it out on the open internet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even though, I'm using fairly standard frameworks, there's nothing creative about authentication and security. I think I have everything controlled pretty well. It's never a smart idea to put systems like this online, Right. A, you never know. And B, you can complain to me, but I'm not really able to do anything about it, So if it breaks, you get to keep both parts. That's kind of the part of the license as well.
Right. So like that, we talked a little bit about the making money off of it. I think that's another part of that discussion is like, you're basically the developer on this, and, obviously you're doing what you can, but I assume that you're not a full-time security guy. And so like, there is always the question. So like, if someone really wanted to use this in a system critical place, one of the conversations may be, okay, how about you give us $10,000 so that we can get a security audit done on it?
Oh, very good. Yeah, that would be cool. So I'm a security architect in real life. So I do know a little bit about it, but I got to admit that, this whole pen testing thing that you would do then, that's not my forte. That's true. Mm-hmm. There used to be a platform, I think Hunter.io or something like that. They had this whole bounty program also for open source software. So I didn't even have to invest anything, but people could get, a few dollars for every problem that they found. And they found quite a lot in Firefly 3. So there was all these kinds of, if you do this and this and this, you can skip the two-factor authentication. If you do put this in a form, you get a pop-up. So there's a script injection, stuff like that. I think I got my bases covered. But yeah, it's an interesting discussion to get that really to the next level. Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have like an open bug reporting system? What does the project use for that?
Yeah. So right now everything is on GitHub. They have a security policy and a program and everything that entails. There's not really a lot of budget to pay people for issues. But yeah, there is a whole security policy you can do. And this is pretty good on GitHub, actually. You can open private issues with a clone of the repository with examples and bugs that you found. So if I invite everybody to try and find something and go wild, because that really helps the software be more secure also in the future.
Yeah. There's a problem that some projects are seeing. It's particularly those that have the budget to be able to have bug bounties, but they're getting AI slop on their reports.
I can imagine so. Yeah.
Are you at the point to where people are sending in AI written pull requests?
Yeah. I've had a few already. So sometimes you see it in the translations or the way people write, with the nice bullet lists and stuff like that. This is an AI question or an AI request or an AI bug fix, because they tend to over-explain what they're doing. And then okay, this is AI. And I think the last one that I had, and I didn't realize this until it was, well, on the developed version at least, they wrote a bug fix. They added some currencies, fairly basic stuff. But in the source code were also the pluses that you would see in a diff file.
Oops.
So the pluses were included in the source code. And the way it was written, you wouldn't really notice. It would parse and it would lint correctly. But if you started running it, the system was like, yeah, I cannot add two arrays together, so this is not going to fly. But also my fault, because I was like, oh, this looks good. I see the pluses, I see the difference. Wait, the pluses are part of the source code.
Yeah. So do you have a policy on how to deal with the AI generated PRs? Is that an automatic close?
No. I don't really have a policy yet, I gotta admit. So far, what I've been seeing is it's very small. I am wary of very big fixes or very big improvements, with no communication.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
You get this massive new PR with 1,000 lines. What I built for you is a tool to parse receipts. It connects to ChatGPT. It works very well, and just merge it, and everything should be golden. So that's not going to fly. At the same time, there was a person who implemented SimpleFin, which is a data import thing. And at some point, it's a big request. It's a big PR. So you got to really go through everything and then try it a few times and see what happens. But so far, the AI stuff, I'm not particularly against it. But I am more skeptical when people submit AI stuff. But because you also know, or maybe that's not entirely fair, but I think I know that when people use AI to do everything for them, that they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So I would rather have somebody who, writes half a report. I think this works, but check it out, instead of a fancy, well-written AI PR, where I know that if I start poking holes in it, the actual author doesn't really know what's going on, but they have to ask ChatGPT to fix it for them. And that doesn't really feel right,
Right. Yeah, I've seen, I think it's the Mesa project. They came out with some guidance on that. And it's like, we'll take AI written code, but the person sending the pull request in actually needs to understand it.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, it's difficult to check, I think, but that's a good one.
Yes. Yeah. It's becoming more and more of an issue that projects are sort of having to come up with, because people, and it's kind of a good problem because lots of people are zealous. Like they're excited about the project. They want to help out. And they're suddenly given this new tool that lets them do these sort of things. But they don't necessarily understand that it's not as magical as it seems.
Yeah, especially when you got to start debugging, you see, I think there were a few examples from Microsoft as well, where people were just desperately typing into the PR, oh, you got to fix this and this and this. No, that doesn't fix it, or that introduced something else. And you hear this AI apologizing. Oh, sorry about that. Let's try again.
Yes.
At some point, you maybe want to do it yourself instead. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what, well, we did get a question actually from the audience now that I remember. Nice. Mashed Potato, one of our longtime listeners. Is this tool good for tracking investments, portfolios, funds, bonds, etc.?
No, it's not, I'm afraid. I use Portfolio Performance myself, which is open source.
Okay.
Based on Eclipse, but you can't have everything. And that's really good at tracking also, the stock that you bought, connects to Yahoo Finance, connects to other stuff. So that's really what I would use to track investments. Because it's a whole other, you could build another Firefly on personal stock and investments and stuff like that. What I do is I have one account where I put in all my investments. So basically, in real life, it goes to some broker, and I have been playing around with manually adding or subtracting gains and losses. But I felt like a hassle, and then I thought, am I going to build something for this? Not yet. So that's where we are right now.
What is there like a plugin system for Firefly? So if someone wanted to write a little bit of glue code to import the data from the one tool to the other?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not really that you can expand the UI or get into Firefly itself, but there's a pretty expensive API So you can get all the transactions, you can get all the data from the system. There's also webhooks, so you can respond to events in Firefly live. You can respond to budget changes and to bills and to whatever you want to do. And if you get it right, basically you could do stock tracking as well. You could do daily wins, gains, losses and gains. You could add them as transactions or update one existing transaction. There's a lot of stuff that you can do.
I'm assuming something like Bitcoin or one of the other coins would be sort of fall into that same bucket where there's not real great support for it at the moment, but somebody pull requests are welcome, right?
Yeah. Well, for example, what I've been playing around with recently is the idea that somebody had that I want to track, like you say, investments. In this case, I want to track the price of my house on the market. Or the price of any asset, really. So stock would come into play as well. And one hack that you can do is you can add a new currency called house. And you have a bank account with one house on it.
Right.
And then you start tracking exchange rates, from one house to the dollar. And then you can up and down the price of your house. But it's kind of hacky, gimmicky, but it does work if you want to see how much your house has been worth over time. Because it does take into account exchange rates when you have a monthly chart. So it could work, but not really happy with the implementation yet.
Yeah, no, that's actually a reasonably good way to do that. And so somebody could write a plugin that goes to Zillow, let's say, and gets the estimate from there as to what the house is probably worth.
Yeah, that could work, absolutely.
It'd be very interesting to see.
But that's also something, you have this multi-currency support where you also can, Firefly can already download exchange rates for you. So it will update every week to see if there are new rates, and I get them from several providers. So there's one big Azure bucket where you get everything. And that also shows you, how much money do you have in British pounds or US dollars or whatever you want, and will allow you to track it over time.
Yeah. What if you were to put your finger on something and you say this is the next big feature I'd like to support? What would that be? So
right now, it's the technical feature that I'm struggling with right now is the fact that the UI and the layout is very much 1990s. So it's, there's templates, but it's not really, API first or mobile first, or, it's all very model view controller, which is, of course, horribly old-fashioned these days. And when it comes to financial products, what features do you want? What features do you want to have? I'm really looking into more reporting. So if you really want to see specific things about your finances, right now it's very opinionated on what I would like to see in my reports and what I am interested in. But if you've got this big bucket of transactions and tags and categories and destination and source accounts, it should be possible to, in the way of Grafana or something similar, to build your own dashboard or build your own flow. And that's something that I want to add as well. Maybe it's just going to be Grafana support or something similar, but that's something that I'm missing right now. Really the insight.
Yeah, interesting. Are there any really good bugs or good issues that if somebody wanted to jump in and help with this, that you could point them to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a few bugs open, small ones and large ones, and I'm also looking at. So it gets complicated quickly, but right now an account basically supports one currency. And this is separate from the transactions that you put into the account. They could have a different currency, but it's not really user-friendly. People create a new US dollar account and the system will always create US dollar transactions for you. And that's something where you see a lot of banks these days have multi-currency accounts where you can actually have multiple currencies into one account instead of having them converted by force into US dollars or euros or whatever. So you can actually have for example, Revolut, you can get an account with both US dollars and euros and whatever you want without conversion. And that's something that I don't support yet. And that's something that I want to work on. And technically speaking, it's not that complicated, but it's also, it needs a lot of view stuff. How do you look at an account with multiple balances, and how do they relate to each other? How do you present something like that? That's something that I really want to work on.
Yeah, I imagine that that's a problem that has some complexities to it, because you've also got to think about conversion rates and lots of stuff. I'm sure there's lots of stuff that goes along with that.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, but if you're interested in it, just ask me. If you submit a transaction right now, it forces you to use the currency of the account. If you disable that enforcement, then you already have part of the problem solved, because you can do euro and US dollar transactions, for example.
Right.
Then the next step is to do presentation, and that's relatively simple. If you know for sure that the data is in the system and it's correct, and most of the code to do that is already in place, then all you got to think about is presentation. And that should be, especially when you're new to the project, it doesn't really matter if you're a new developer, but if you're new to the project, that's relatively simple to pick up on and try, and without a lot of harm, basically. So that would be cool to pick up.
Yeah. Yeah, a good place for people to work on it.
Absolutely.
If somebody wants to dive in, where are some places that you would send someone to get started? Is there a Discord server or?
There's a gitter.im server. It's in the README as well. So that's basically also, again, the open source version of Discord. There's the documentation, there's API documentation that I'm pretty proud of. So there's a lot of documentation on how the system works. There's in the documentation, if you search for architecture, you get a pretty good overview of what the components are and how they relate to one another, so you know what to look for. And it also shows you how in the source code things are divided and what you gotta look for. So I'm pretty proud of the structure, but if you really want to get started, just ask away and I'll get you up and running. Because the one thing that I'm still missing is an easy development environment for everybody. When I started this, I'm used to running, virtual machines on my own system, developing software. I used to do real software development for a living, so I remember how to set up stuff like this. But there's still people that I can do PHP, but I don't know how to set this up so it works for me. What can I do? And that's something that I still have to write about.
Yeah, there's probably some tools out there. In fact, I bet VS Code actually has a pretty decent way to do that.
Yeah. There's also, for example, this is based on Laravel, the PHP framework. They have this Homestead thing, which is basically a virtual machine that contains all of their stuff. You can plug in any program that uses their framework. But I got to look into this myself because they solve this problem, but I don't have that problem. So I never really looked into that software.
So do you just spin up a VM, do the install, and then hack away on the code underneath?
Yeah, basically. And it started becoming a more complicated VM because you also want to run the data importer. You also want to run maybe your own side project. So it started being bigger and bigger and bigger. But just like the installation you've been doing right now, you serve to local host, and that's where the development environment is, and then you can get started.
Yeah. I'm reading some of the documentation, and I assume you wrote this, and you say, I don't like accounting, but I also don't like the fact that people buy a $60,000 sports car and then pretend that they haven't just lost $60,000 by putting up the car as an asset, as if you get your money back.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah,
that's funny.
But that's basically how it started, right? So you want to do you want to get a grip on your personal finance, and before you know it, you got to be an accountant. That was really what the space felt like for me when I started this at the end of my university tour. So the whole accounting space was rife with stuff like that. You got to put up your house against something, and I barely had a room, so it didn't resonate with me. And that's how I started with Firefly. When it comes to personal finances, the month starts with a bucket of money. This is what I have, and let's see if I can stretch this to the actual end of the month. And I tried to separate this from my paycheck as well. So that if I could live in 1 month with a set amount of money, then getting a paycheck somewhere halfway the month or some bonus or whatever, it wouldn't really matter. You had this one budget for the entire month, and all of the money that you earn during the month, you can just save up, or you save it up and then do the next month again. And that way you start separating your finances from your paychecks. And that for me already really helped in getting my finances under control. Also a privilege to not have to live paycheck to paycheck. But even if you manage to live month to month on a paycheck, you get more control over your finances. For me, it always really helped to have the idea, or you see that, okay, there's money coming in. I don't need it right now because I still have some money left for the rest of the month, and I can just save. And it gave me a lot of peace, basically.
Mm-hmm. Have you gotten reports from users that it's been helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What,
if people donate, it's usually with a small thank you note on helping them with their finances. So that's something I'm really grateful for.
Mm-hmm. There are some financial. I don't know exactly what I would call Dave Ramsey. He attempts to help people get their finances in order, and they have these events sometimes where they'll like burn mortgages live on the stage to celebrate that people have finally paid off their debt. And I'm just it seems like it could be fun. I don't know if this would ever happen, but like for someone to send you in a picture of, I got my mortgage paid off and it's thanks to Firefly 3.
That would be awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
It makes sense though that, right, like people would be able to do, if someone doesn't have any visibility into where their finances are at and they're just, the money comes in, the money goes out, and they don't know where, and then suddenly they plug a tool like this in and they get to see where it goes. Like, it makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
I've been talking to an organization that's helping people with that to see if we could set up Firefly for free for people like that, where they could log in online, they could see their own finances, and we would also have to do something with data import and stuff like that, all automatically. So they would have this visualization. And at the time, it turned out that it was very complicated to set this up with Firefly. And I think they went for like a standard Google Drive, Excel kind of thing. Mm. But it was very helpful that if you were struggling with your finances one way or the other, there's a very low-key, low-entry kind of system that you can use, where even if you're not really financially literate, you can still use a system to get control over your finances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I've got to ask, what's the weirdest thing that someone has done with Firefly? I'm sure you get some odd stories.
Well, it's not too bad, actually. There have been a few charitable causes that are doing their finances in Firefly 3. So that's really pushing the limits of what a business finance tool and a personal finance tool is. People who try to keep track of all the money that they borrow to friends, but really extensively. I want to do interest as well, and I want to make sure that they pay it back in time. So I want to get alerts, stuff like that. And okay, so are you a big money lender? No, it's the $10. Okay. And I mean, I can appreciate that you need $10, but it felt a little over the top for the thing that they were doing.
Right.
But also the thing that I always, the thing that I always somehow enjoy the most is when people ask very convoluted or very big feature requests for a problem that obviously they have and they alone. So, okay, so I want to add money to an account, but when I add the money to the account, I also want to send $5 to my mom's account because I always pay her back, and then I also want to make sure it's stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I have this workflow in my finances, and it's very interesting, and I want Firefly to support it as well. That's always a great discussion.
Is there maybe it exists now, or maybe it's a possible future feature? Could you schedule something like that in Firefly and have it actually go out and move money for you in your bank account?
Yeah, already. Yeah, you can schedule recurring transactions. You can set up what you want to do. You can set up the recurrence as well. So how often does the money have to go from A to B? How much? Which category? Which description? Stuff like that. That's something you can already do.
Now, but will Firefly actually move the money for you?
No, not yet. No.
And I suggest this, and now I'm thinking about it, like, is that really a good idea? That might not be a good idea.
Especially when, international transfers. I know my own bank account. I'm pretty sure I can hide this somewhere. That's automated donation, stuff like that. Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. I could see for and against for that one.
Exactly, yeah. But that's something that's interesting. You see it in Europe now that in the banking sector, there's a lot of calls for people to have more access to their data, the open data. There's whole rules and regulations about this, where it should be possible for you as a user to get API access to your data. And that's something that a lot of banks are now implementing. Mm-hmm. The problem is that none of these APIs are in any way or shape unified. So it's still 1,000 different APIs. But banks are now mandated to offer at least an API. And as a company, you can register at your national banking authority to get access to those APIs. Mm-hmm. And that makes it for a lot of people easier to get access to their financial records. So it's no longer, I can only download a PDF. But it's really, there's some JSON endpoint or a REST endpoint that I can talk to and get my data.
Yeah.
And that could also work the other way around. So you can send payments to that system and then send them out into the world.
Makes sense. We've got another listener who says, my wife and I, Quippy says, my wife and I track every dollar spent on an Excel spreadsheet. Nice. We're going to have to check out Firefly 3. So
that would be cool. Yeah, absolutely. So let me know what you run into. If you ever start with Firefly 3, just don't try to import all of the history that you have. It can already be very valuable to start at the first of the month and just go with it and see what happens. The number of transactions into the system grows and it starts making sense more and more and more. Mm-hmm. Instead of trying right now to import, that's something that people try, 10 years of data, and then you have to sort through everything and label everything and blah, 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 blah. And you have your own financial history, something that you can't really change, in a fancy chart, which is useful, but also more of a learning experience than anything else. So if you're going to start right now, or maybe start tomorrow, just start with the transaction starting today and then just move forward. Mm-hmm. And you'll see what Firefly or basically any system can do for you.
Yeah. You have already the ability to import from a CSV. Do we all get James to provide personalized text support like you did for Jonathan? No, mashed potato, you don't. You already have this ability to import from CSV, so that I would assume, like, if someone is currently using Newcash or even just Quippy's decades worth of Excel spreadsheets, probably there's a path there to turn that into a CSV that you could then import.
Yeah, absolutely. So the big challenge is getting one uniform CSV file. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty proud of all of the quirks that I've seen in CSV files over the years. So I'm pretty flexible when it comes to CSV files.
Right.
But if there's any structure into it, the data importer should be able to import it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming, so you mentioned this idea of, just import from the beginning of the month. You probably wouldn't then be able to go back and fill in data from before that. You would want to start at the earliest data you've got.
Yeah.
And then you could probably do it a month at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You could always work backwards.
You can work backwards.
Yeah. So what Firefly currently does is that the balance of your account is not really, so it's getting a bit technical here, I know.
That's fine.
So the balance of your account is not really a number, but it's just the sum of all your transactions up until that point.
Ah, okay.
So if you start at the 1st of November, for example, I assume you have either some money or in your account, it's never exactly zero. Mm-hmm. So you would start with that balance and then work forwards. If you want to work backwards, you got to make sure that starting balance is updated as well. Otherwise, the balance wouldn't really work out. Right. So that's something to keep an eye on. But you could always work backwards through your history. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, this reminds me of a conversation I had with my CPA just a few days ago. We were talking about QuickBooks and closing accounts. And he's like, he's an old guy, it used to take us hours, if not days, to close the accounts at the end of a year. And you go into QuickBooks, you click a button, it's closed. You go to change something, and they're open again. It's like, it's the craziest thing. People have forgotten how to even close and open accounts.
Yeah.
Yep, they have.
Yeah, it's the same in this system. So there's this whole flow about reconciliating your accounts. Do I have all of the transactions? Is it all up to date? Have I not missed anything? And this is especially when you have paper balances or checks or stuff like that. And in a digital system, it's very quick to know, okay, this works, click and go.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a big advantage. It also almost removes the feel of doing your finances. It removes some of the weight, but also some of the burden. So that's also fine.
Yeah. So for some of us, losing out on that, it's going to be a sad thing. It's like, I got such a joy out of making things reconcile and it zeroing out. And for others, I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore.
Exactly. It's like, I'm an accountant. I know I got a mouse at home as well. Yeah. Two different things. The gravitas is a little lost, but then again, you do give people a lot of control over their finances and they know what they're doing. They see where their money is going. That's very valuable, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I've run into a 500 error on trying to do the imports. That's all right. I'll play with this some more. It probably is because that I did the Docker install without the importer, and then I tried to go back and do the Docker install with the importer. So I'll just have to go and wipe that install out and start over. But I want to see if I can get these CSV files imported and look at some real data on there. I think it'd be fun.
That would be cool.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be cool.
All right. So I've got to ask you a couple of final questions, and that is What's your favorite text editor? What do you work on this with? And what's your favorite scripting language?
So most of my scripting I do in Bash and a little Python. Mm-hmm. I do most of my software development in PHP Storm, but also Sublime text.
Okay, got it.
And on the console, it's all Nano, I'm afraid, not VI or anything else.
I too am a Nano user. I know where my Nano love came from, and that's because I got started, 30 years ago in Microsoft products, and QBasic was the first thing that I did. And so, like the QBasic interface and the edit interface, it is basically the same thing as a Nano interface. Yeah. So it just feels right to me.
Yeah, nice.
All right, awesome. It has been a lot of fun to talk to you and to talk about Firefly. I appreciate very much you coming on.
Absolutely.
When you do your next major release, or you get another major feature there, let me know and we'll have you back on the show and be glad to chat about it again.
Yeah, that would be cool. Thanks again for having me. I had a lot of fun as well. And
yes.
Let me know what you run into. If you can't fix it, then I'll happy to show you or try to help you at least.
I think you mean fix the bugs I run into, because suddenly surely it's not a PEBCAC error.
It cannot be. It must be my side.
It can't be. All right, James Cole, thank you so much. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
All right, that was talking with James Cole about Firefly 3, a project that I am going to have to spend some more time with, and I think probably a lot of our listeners should too. It is a lot of fun. We do not yet have a guest scheduled for next week, so if you run an open source project or know somebody that does and you think you should put it on the show, let us know. You can get us at floss@hackaday.com, drop an email there, or you can contact me on Twitter, X, or any of the other social media places that I hang out. Let us know. We'll get them on the show. Appreciate everybody that's here, both that listens and watches, those who get us live and on the download, and we'll be back next week for another Floss Weekly.